Hello friends, in this video we will discuss ZeroTrust architecture and what it means. Is this something which is a one-touch solution, like you get some device, you deploy some appliance, or you run a software and you have a zero trust environment in your organization? So let's see what are the specific details and what is the correct understanding of zero trust architecture. Now, to understand zero trust or zero trust architecture, it is very important to understand zero trust principle. So, zero trust is a set of security principle which treats every service, component, or user of a system as continuously exposed and potentially exploited by any threat actor, right? So, these are the two key term, like continuous exposure and potentially compromised. So if you have a computer in a specific security zone in your network architecture, so in network architecture we define certain security zones based on firewall interfaces. So this is one way of low level designing of security zones in our organization. However, we should understand that a security zoning or the network segmentation on a higher level is not just about the firewall interfaces and how we segment the LAN. It's a broader concept where we have to understand the data flow across different departments. So that also involve understanding business, understanding the specific function of different departments. But let's bring the whole discussion to a very low level just to understand from a technical point of view. So if you have different zones or different segments of network in your organization, then what you understand with a zero trust paradigm is that you have a computer, let's say it's in DMZ, then you think that computer as being continuously exposed or potentially compromised. So if you treat that computer with this understanding or this boundary condition or this premise, you can say, then you can think of different principles, security principle, which can be employed to achieve zero trust, right? So this is the spirit of zero trust or zero trust principle, I can say. Now this zero trust principle derives zero trust architecture. So the first three security principles, which is open design, least common mechanism, and economy of mechanism. So these three are the security principle. If we follow it, it will help to reduce the zero-day attacks, right? So it will be mostly used in the architecture and engineering of the secure system. Like when we are building the secure system, then we think of like domain separation, then we think of economy of mechanism, then we think of least common mechanism. Now in the field of zero trust architecture, the other 5 security principles are being used, or we use other 5 security principles to enable zero trust architecture, right? So the other way of thinking is that the zero trust principle is essentially the 5 foundational security design principles which enable zero trust architecture. What are those 5 foundational security principles which are at the heart of zero trust architecture? So these principles are separation of privilege, least privilege, complete mediation, fail-safe default, and psychological acceptability. So these 5 foundational security principles, if it is enforced into a system, then we can say that we have achieved deploying the necessary security principle to enable zero trust, right? Now what is the implication of these 5 security principles which I just listed? Now the implication of these 5 security principles is that it will operationally enable a system to resist to a zero-day attack, right? So it will not be deployed at the time of designing or at the time of making the blueprint of the system, but when the system is already designed, deployed, then we use these 5 security principles to achieve the resilience against zero trust, right? And these 5 security principles are basically enabler of a zero trust architecture, right? So I'm using the term zero trust and 0 day quite common, and you can see that there is a relation between it. Like if you are resilient to 0 day attack, in a sense you reflect your system's design compliant to a zero trust architecture, right? It's not exactly the same thing, but zero trust, the resilience to handle 0 day attack is one of the dimension of zero trust architecture's benefit, actually, right? You can think in that way. Now let's look into the end state when we deploy these 5 security principle in some shape and form. It could be some set of hardware or software, or some process and policy or governance strategy which will enable these 5 security principle. It's not only the one type of thing which will enable a system or an organization to achieve zero trust. So separation of privilege means we are using multiple ways or multiple methods to grant access, right? Least privilege. What is least privilege in the context of zero trust? Least privilege in the context of zero trust means to enforce need to know and need to access principles, right? So these are the two familiar and somewhat related principles. The third principle is complete mediation. Complete mediation means to authorize access at each and every request. So it should not be like one you authorize a specific request once, and then that is used to perform 10 different tasks. So if you have 10 different tasks, then you invoke the authorization function at 10 different steps. So each and every task will be triggering one authorization request. That's mean by complete mediation. It's like you are mediating the whole point A to point B. Every access request you are auditing it and you are providing an authorization, right? So that's the third important security principle in the domain of zero trust. The fourth principle is fail-safe default. It could have various meanings in different contexts, but in zero trust architecture concept, fail-safe default means to deny by default, right? So you deny access by default, that is fail-safe default here. So here you are in fail-safe, you are not considering the safety of anything else rather than the information. So you are safeguarding information. So you are doing fail-safe from the perspective of information. The broader fail-safe default in the world of security domain is to protect human life, right? So that comes as a broader definition. But in zero trust architecture, since we are more concerned in securing information, so here from that perspective, fail-safe default means if there is something failure, then we end up denying the access of the information. And the last and not the least is psychological acceptability, is that the solution should be easy to understood and it should be accepted by everyone. In zero trust architecture or in the zero trust world, psychological acceptability means it ensures ease of use. So if it is easy to use, people will try to follow it, and if it is not, then people will try to find shortcuts, and then you will have non-compliance. In terms of zero trust architecture component, so there are 6 components which we should understand, and if we have people, process and technology addressing these 6 domains, it means we have zero trust architecture deployed in some sense. So first we looked into zero trust principle. What is zero trust principle? Then we looked into the zero trust architecture in terms of what security principles are deployed in the architecture. Now we are looking into more specifically zero trust components. So there are 6 zero trust components we should be mindful of. And what are these 6 components? The first component is to verify identity. So identity verification is the first or the very for a starting point of the zero trust architecture. We should have a robust mechanism to validate the identity of any subject, and subject could be a user, it could be a component, it could be a service. So for everything we should have a robust mechanism of identifying who is the user and who is the subject, right? So that is essentially is identity verification. Now once you verify the identity, then only you can control the access, right? So the second component is access control. Now once you have verified the identity, you know who is going to be the user or who is going to be the subject. Now with this subject you can define its level of authorization, and with the level of authorization I mean like you have an access matrix, and it dictates depending on the context of the communication which system it can talk to. So first is verifying the identity, then access control. And once you have these two things in place, then you have resource protection, right? So this is the third component. So first component of zero trust architecture is identity verification, second component is access control, and third component is basically resource protection. So you have tools and technology for identity verification, you have different set of tools and technology for access control, and you have a different set of technology for resource protection. Once you have these three things in place, like it will follow like a staircase. So identity verification, access control, and resource protection. Now this thing has to be orchestrated or automated in some fashion. You cannot have a disjointed set of technologies working in a different asynchronous way and then say that we have zero trust architecture. No, if we don't have a unified automated and a unified orchestration in place, then there will always be a chance of what we call in information security covert channel or bypass methods, right? So people can bypass security controls. So this has to be automated and orchestrated in a uniform fashion. So that is the fourth component, right? So far we have looked into four components. First is verifying the identity verification, access control, and then we looked into the resource protection. Then automation and orchestration is the fourth component. Now what is the fifth component? It's very important, which is monitoring and analysis, right? So you want to monitor and analyze the whole thing which is happening in the zero trust ecology, right? We also say monitoring and analytics, right? So analytics, analysis goes hand in hand. Now what is the sixth component? Sixth component is more administrative in nature, which is the governance of the zero trust architecture, right? So these are the six important component of zero trust architecture, and we should have these six component in our mind. So in summary, how can I summarize zero trust architecture? So the summary of zero trust architecture is that you have zero trust principle, which is derived from the foundational security principle. Then you have zero trust architecture, which talks about the 5 foundational security principle imported from the world of the foundational security principles. Now these 5 security principles are imported into the zero trust architecture components, which are 6. And once you have all these 6 components deployed in your system, then you have a zero trust architecture. I hope this video was useful, and if you like this video, put a thumbs up. You can share this video with your fellow friends who are interested in zero trust architecture, and this is in some way gonna be helpful in your CISSP and CCSP exams as well. Thanks for watching.